You've got to figure out what that motivation is and baseline knowledge and just build off of that. Autonomy, huge. If you're going to enact change, they have to be the agent of change. You can have all the goodwill and support them, but they have got to come to the realization on their own that they're ready to make the change, and it's got to be autonomous. They've got to do that. So you don't want to get stuck, and there's a fine line between autonomy with the person you're working with and then that line of where you're an enabler, right? So you're providing so much support that they're leaning on you a whole lot. A whole lot. So what you're trying to get them to do, they're just going to kind of follow you because they're leaning on you. So if someone's leaning on me and I walk back this way, which way are they going to go? They're going to fall come with me. And that's not what you want. You want them standing tall, going their own direction with your guidance and support. But you don't want them leaning on you. That's okay, but they've got to have a balance there, right? So if you step away, you don't want them to fall. And that goes to that evocation. So you want to evoke the change. So that takes autonomy, that takes compassion, that takes collaboration, and then they're going to actually make the change happen on their own because they're ready, they're in the right place, they have the skills that they need, you've imparted your wisdom on them, and they're turning that into action. Collaboration, not confrontation. So you're working with them, not against them. Now, there's going to be those times, and I know it, you guys know it, we know. So with recovery groups and meetings, anecdotally, I've never been through it, but what I do know is if you're engaged and you go to meetings, you are going to be more successful. You are going to be. The data shows that to be the case. And we know that, right? But they don't. So I was telling Pastor Kyle, I just started this crazy 16-week workout program. And I'm only allowed to eat the food that's on my meal plan. I'm not doing very well. I just had 3 chicken minis. That is not on my meal plan. So I was supposed to bring my food with me that's pre-packed. I'm supposed to eat snacks. I'm supposed to eat lunch. I haven't had lunch in probably 20 years. And I'm a retail pharmacist, and guess what pharmacists don't get? Number one, you don't want us eating in the pharmacy, so there's no food allowed in there. And guess what else we don't get? We don't get a lunch break. I don't work at Target, now CVS, or Walmart, or Walgreens now. I work at Kroger. There are no lunch breaks. If you take a lunch break and you're out of the pharmacy, you have to close. That's not good. And guess what else you can't do? You don't get a break for? Bathroom. Are you insane? No bathroom breaks. So, like I'm going to have time to sit down and eat I'm not doing well. I'm just not doing very well with this workout thing, with the food part. It's not that I'm overeating. They say I'm not eating enough. So my body's in a caveman state because I starved myself all day and I'm retaining fat. So I have to trust them because they're the experts. And the meals are by a nutritionist. I've got this personal trainer. So I've got to trust their knowledge because guess what? I don't know the difference between a micro and macronutrient. I don't know what my body needs after a workout versus a cardio thing. I just don't know that stuff. I'm a pharmacist. Give me a drug, I'll tell you what it's going to do. Give me a piece of meat or a piece of cheese. I don't know the difference. So you've got to, what you know, you've got to impart that wisdom on them, and then you've got to figure out where those knowledge gaps are and fill those in, but it's not a confrontation. So this is just an example. So I was very resistant to this change. And it was very difficult, and the trainer sat me down and walked me through it and wasn't confrontational and didn't say, you have to do this. if you don't do this, you're not going to get to here where you want to be. They just use motivational interviewing skills. What do you want to get out of this? So I told them. And they said, okay, well, if you want to get this out of this, then you should do this, this, and this. And I said, well, what if I don't do this middle piece? And they said, well, you said you wanted to get here, you might only get here. So that works with any situation. Evocation, not education. So you want them to want to make the change, right? And you can give them all the knowledge and you can educate them, but if you haven't found that hook, you haven't found the motivation, you haven't found the thing that's going to want them to change, then you're just going to keep educating. It's like, sorry, you're preaching to them. You're preaching to the choir. And you don't want to do that. So preaching to the choir, they know it. They've heard it. Pastor Kyle's given the same sermon 5 times, and they've been there, and they've done the hymnals. They could probably do it themselves. So you don't want to preach to the choir. So find something that they don't know, that they might be interested in, that would engage them with you. Okay? So it's not about just education. You got to figure out those discrepancies and find where something's missing. And we're going to talk a lot about that last bullet point. We're going to do a lot of practice with that. Ask key open-ended questions. So can anybody just throw at me an example of an open-ended question? Anybody?
What's your favorite color?
That was a very good try, but it's going to be a one-word answer, right?
Oh, that's right. Can't be one word.
Yep. So it was, she said, what's your favorite color? Well, my favorite color, it's orange. Come on. I knew that one, orange. I basically bleed orange.
Why is orange your favorite color?
Well, you're going to get me started. So I went to UTK undergrad, graduated, met my wife at a tailgate after graduation, went on to pharmacy school, have a great career that I love. So most of where I am today, I owe to the Big Orange. So it's not because of the football team. I can tell you that. No, but orange, I love it. So my boys, my oldest, he's 9, Max, he got to pick the paint color in his room, orange. So as far as Max knows, and I haven't educated him otherwise, there's only one college. There's only one. There's no other colleges. But we play football and we play other teams, but he still thinks there's only one. So that's UT. And then I've got that down there. So it says, believe in yourself. And then it's got in red, be you. So when you're counseling or working someone, you want to be genuine. So be you. And that's going to help them be themselves. Because if you're putting up a front, guess what? You might not think so. They can pick, they see that. They can read that in you. And then guess what? They model that. So if you're putting up a front and trying to be someone you're not, guess what? They're going to do the same thing. So the more genuine you are and just being you, that helps them be themselves. Autonomy, not authority. And that's when I'm with the students, and I do this sometimes because I have to, because it's a different generation, and I'm going to throw out that term, entitled. And I gotta put them in their place. Look, I'm the boss. I'm teaching you. I'm the one, I'm telling, I don't care what they do at Rite Aid. I'm telling you how it is. So they've all got their lived experience, and sometimes they just need to accept what's coming at them. But in any situation, you want to kind of roll with that, acknowledge that when it's appropriate. So in the academic setting, I can't let it slide because guess what? They're going to be taking care of you one day, right? So they need to know what they need to know. And there's little gray area there. But when you're working with someone, you always want to quantify and qualify their statements. So, for example, I get this all the time. The vaccines have microchips. I don't think they do. I was involved in some of the research. Unless they're really, really tiny, I don't know that they're in there. But so how I would reframe that is that, well, I understand that's a fear of yours. And why is that a fear of yours? Why do microchips? Well, because they're going to track me. I said, well, did you bring your cell phone with you today? Yeah, I don't leave home without it. But I thought you just said, and then here's the discrepancy, you're worried about the government tracking you. Yeah, I don't want them tracking me. Well, you just said you brought your cell phone with you. And then they start thinking, oh, yeah. Oh, they're already tracking me, right? Because if you use a cell phone, they know where you are all the time if it's on. Even if you turn off the GPS locating, guess what it's still doing? Triangulating your exact location through the cellular signals, right? So you don't want to dismiss it, because if you just say, psh, that's a bunch of garbage, guess what you've done? You lost them. And then you just built that wall. So you'll never get them to go down that path because you shut it off. So don't close those doors and windows. You want to keep them open, because they might, after working with you, they might make their own autonomous decision and evoke that change, and they might walk through that door. But they can't if it's closed. So that last bullet point over there, it's very important. You always want to emphasize the patient's control and choice. That's that autonomy. Because if they come to the decision on their own, it's going to be more impactful, and it's going to be more likely that they actually make the change that you want them to make. Compassion. You've got to have empathy for the experience of others. Trust me, when it comes to empathy, I'm awful. I get emotional. I cry easy. But, you know, I've noticed in my general reactions with people, when you're more genuine, guess what? They are too. So it just goes back to all that stuff. You don't have to put up your own wall if you're trying to get someone to break down theirs. And that whole empathy, and sometimes I see it in kids a little bit that are just always here on their tablets and their electronic devices, and they haven't developed those skills to look at someone's face and see how they're feeling, right? Kind of the stuff that we take for granted. You can kind of look in someone's eyes and kind of feel their pain, right? So that's empathy. So you've got to have that desire to alleviate the suffering in others. It's part of it. If you're going to be a motivational interviewer and you're going to want to try to enact change and make people's lives better, you've got to have a genuine desire to do it. It can't be pretend. You've got to believe and be committed to act in the best interests of your patient. And sometimes that can be hard. I can't think of any really good examples. The one that just popped into my head is I've got a great primary care physician. He's awesome. He's also a DO, so he does a lot of non-medicine type things. So as a pharmacist, that would kind of rub me the wrong way, right? Because, hey, medicine can fix that. But you know what I like? We work together, and he's taught me a lot about more holistic type things, more physical therapy type things, more natural things that I can do in my life to help alleviate some of the other things, to avoid medications and that type thing. So all that to tell you this, he's busy, totally swamped. So when it comes to working with an employer group or something like that, and you've got benchmarks that you've got to hit, you've got to see so many patients, you've got to bring in so many RVUs, all of these things that are hovering over your head, sometimes it's hard for you to do exactly what's best for your patient, right? Because maybe you have one that you really need to spend 30 more minutes with. You really do. That would really help that patient. But if you do that, you're going to be 4 hours behind for the rest of the day. So these are the decisions that practitioners make, and they're difficult. So sometimes it's really hard. You want to do the right thing, but sometimes you just can't because of the environment you're in. So you've just got to do the best that you can. Okay, what motivational interviewing is not? So we want to bring people to a place that they're making their own decision. It's not tricking them into it, okay? So you're not tricking them into doing something because you're in it with them, right? So you don't want to bamboozle them, and you don't want them bamboozling you. It's not just a specific technique. So when we talk about this, motivational interviewing is multifaceted. There's a lot of different pieces and parts to it. So it's not just a simple technique, something that we use in the pharmacy. We've got our basic 7 questions that we ask. Standard. We ask them every single time. That's not what this is, because every interaction, every patient, every client is not the same. So you can't put them in a box and ask them the exact same questions. So it's not just a specific technique that's replicable in all scenarios. Problem solving or skill building. That's not what you're doing. You're not helping them with their problem solving skills. You're not building skills. You're helping them, motivating them, and then they might develop some of that on their own, but this is not what you're imparting on them. It's just patient-centered therapy. No. They can go see a therapist for that, for cognitive behavioral therapy. That's not what you're doing here. It's easy to learn. Not really. It took me forever to get my open-ended questions down because it's not natural. But now it's natural, and it drives my wife insane. Because guess what? She rarely gets to say to me yes or no because I'm not asking a closed-ended question. So she's got to give me some more. And trust me, it drives her insane. So practice that, and we'll practice some of those. But in my daily life, and you'll hear it at the end, what questions do you guys have? I don't ever say, do you have any questions? Because guess what? I hear silence in the room. But if I say, what questions do I have, what automatically happens in your brain when I say, what questions do you have? You start thinking. So open-ended questions make you naturally, without you doing anything, it makes the person you're talking to think. They have to. And this isn't a panacea and cure-all for every situation. I wish motivational interviewing worked 100% of the time, because guess what? No one would be suffering because we could talk them out of it. So that's not what this is. You don't argue, no arguing. Remember, this is a collaborative effort. You don't argue that they have a problem and need to change. You emphasize an acceptance of the problems and the diagnosis, and you go from there. You're not offering direct advice or prescribing set solutions. Because remember, this isn't one size fits all, and you've got to get to know your patient first. So you're not just saying, hey, if you cut your carbs by this much, you limit your fat intake, you exercise 90 minutes a day, boom. That's not how this works. We've talked about being authoritative. You don't want to do that. You want to be a reference and a source for information. You don't want to just say, this is how it is, and this is what you're going to do. You don't want to do most of the talking. That's why you're asking open-ended questions. You're trying to get to know your audience. You're trying to get to know the people you're working with. So you want them to open up and do most of the talking, because guess what? That's where you're going to find what motivates them and what they're talking about. So you've got to be a very good listener. So you've got to get them talking. You don't want to do all the talking. Allow them to determine the content and direction of the counseling to a degree. So basically how I think of this is you've got your yellow line and white line on the road, right? You can go anywhere between those lines as long as you don't cross them. So when you're working with people, you set your guidelines out here and let them go wherever they want to go. It's kind of like the cars at Dollywood, right? You can go back and forth, but when you hit that middle rail, it pulls you back. So you guys are going to be like that middle guide rail, and you can let them wander, but you always pull them back. Behaves in a punitive or coercive manner. No, because you guys know what's going to happen. It's going to build those walls, right? So you don't want to be punitive. You want to be collaborative. You don't want to coerce them because that defeats the whole purpose of the autonomy and them coming to the decision. Oh, no. This was supposed to be one of those fancy slides where it had animations. Dang. Kyle, it had it on my so this was supposed to be participation where I would say, okay, so if someone's angry and agitated, what are they really feeling? Yep, you got it. So we'll just walk through these. It won't be as interactive as I had planned. But so oppositional. They might be feeling helpless or overwhelmed. And you see these arrows go both ways, right? So that's for us and the people we're working with. So we can all have these feelings, and that's kind of what's happening. And usually, our patients and the people we're working with are on one side and we're on the other. And it's not necessarily that we're all on this side and they're all on the other side. We're just on different sides of the arrow. It can be on, either column, but we're just on different sides of the arrow. So if you're starting to feel one of these ways, you can kind of assume or kind of say, you know what, the person I'm working with is probably feeling this way. So this is so discounting. Yeah, I know I'm an addict. You know what that really is? It's shame. Because they've been stigmatized, right? Defensive, it's because they feel trapped. Justifying, when they say, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know I need to watch my blood sugar. Yeah, I know I need to cut back on my drinking. Yeah, I know opioids are bad. They're disengaged. So they're just basically parroting back what they think you want them to. So that's when, and you guys got to be attuned to this, they're telling you what you want to hear just to get out of the conversation because they're disengaged. If they feel like they're not understood, and typically this will happen if you're doing all the talking and don't give them a chance to talk, they're not going to come back because you don't understand them. You're not the right person for them because you just don't get it. You don't understand. You don't care. So they won't come back. Same thing with not heard. So when you're doing motivational interviewing and you're trying not to do all the talking and you're listening, you know how you let them know you heard them? You always summarize in your words what you think they were trying to tell you. And the reason you do that is because what you think they were trying to tell you might not be what they were trying to tell you. And if you don't do that, there's going to be a disconnect. And here's the problem with that disconnect. You're not going to know you're disconnected. You're going to think you're on the same page, but you're not. So that is critically important. You got to hear them, and to make sure that you're on the same page, repeat back to them a summary of what you thought they were trying to tell you. And then if they're procrastinating, they're just being resistant. Like, I didn't bring my pre-packed meals today because I knew Pastor Kyle was going to have coffee and someone was bringing Chick-fil-A. And I didn't want to be rude and not eat the food. So there you go. So I'm being resistant because I could have brought that and just excused myself from the chicken minis, but I didn't do that, did I? I'm being resistant. And I've got that titled up there, The Writing Reflex. So I didn't explain that. That is our natural instinct to come back to center. So if you put a baby down, they're always going to right themselves, right? It's just natural. You put a dog in the pool, they just start doing this, right? The righting reflex. It's just an innate thing. So all of those things that go back and forth, those are natural. That's how most people feel. It's the righting reflex. So here's kind of the more positive side. So when you feel like you're understood, that's a safe place. When you want to talk more, you feel empowered because the person you're talking to is listening. You feel empowered. Liking the counselor, that's because you've probably got that rapport and that engagement, and you're developing that relationship, and they're feeling hopeful, maybe for the first time in a long time. So, and that's a good feeling, right? Open, that just means they're comfortable. They're comfortable with you. So they're sharing things. So when you guys are seeing these things on the left side happening, on the right side, that's how they feel on the inside. So when they're opening up to you, they're more comfortable. When they're accepting what you're saying and not being confrontational and automatically discounting what you're saying, they're interested. They're interested in hearing. They're interested in learning more. They're interested in possibly enacting those changes you've been suggesting to make a positive improvement in their life. When they're respected, they're going to come back. And then engaged and able to change, cooperative. They're ready to work with you. They're ready to accept your help in making this change. Okay, it's okay. You're not wrestling, and when you start, it really feels that way because you're working with someone, you know what's good for them. They can't see it, right? That's a lot of times when we go into these initial interactions, we're like, well, I know what they need to do. And you feel like you're hitting a wall, you're always constantly fighting. It's like that side over there. That doesn't look very comfortable, right? But that guy in the back, he's got them right where he wants them, but they're struggling. They're both struggling. That's not fun. And this side over here, you're dancing. You're together. You're having fun doing it, right? So you don't always have to make change happen when you're counseling because you can't, right? Who's in charge of actually making the change? They are, right? They are. Now, you can dance with them and they can follow your lead to a degree, but they've got to do it on their own. Because if you're not doing that, you're wrestling with them. You're pulling them. You're dragging them across the mat. And you don't want that. You don't have to come up with all the answers. Because trust me, I don't have all the answers. And a lot of times, my answers aren't the best ones for that person. And what is the best answer going to be? Yes, the best answer and the one that's going to be able to change their life is the one that they come up with, not the one that you come up with. Ambivalence, also a very natural and common human condition. So, I want to change, but I don't want to change. So, let's make this all about myself. I love to play tennis. Love it. Been doing it my whole life. It's easy for me. It's just simple muscle memory. I go out there, I have fun. I don't get slaughtered. I play in an old man's league. You know, I win some, lose some, but I never get like blanked, like 6-0. Played last night, 6-2, 6-3. And that first game, it was 5-0, and I thought I was going to get blanked. But it's because of this stupid workout stuff. My arms and my body feels like crap. And I promise, the balls, they were out by like this much. And it's because I'm stronger. And I don't like it. So I want to change, but I don't want to change. I'd like to be a little stronger and a little healthier, but I don't want to be hitting the ball so far out in tennis. So I want to change, but I don't want to change. So it's just kind of, I'm ambivalent. And I'm leaning more towards stopping the hard thing, the 5 a.m. workouts, and doing the thing that I love, right? And that's normal. That's natural. So we're going to practice something here. So just find a partner. So it's going to be easy for you guys. June, you two back there, and then you guys can be a trio in the back table. But find a partner. Each of you write down something you're interested in doing but have mixed feelings about. That can be anything at all. And then you guys are going to talk to each other, so pick who's going to be the speaker and who's going to be the listener. And the speaker, whatever you wrote down, you're going to present what it is that you would like to do but haven't done yet. And then the listener is going to argue strongly in favor of one of the opinions or sides. So, for example, in my scenario, I want to do this workout thing to better yada, yada, yada. And then the listener would argue either for or against that. Does that make sense? So, Pastor Kyle, he is going to start drinking 2 beers a night. And then Alora is going to argue either for or against that. She's going to say, yeah, I think that's a great idea. You should have 2 beers every night. Or she's going to say, I don't think you should have 2 beers on top of your 4 beers every night. And then you're just going to have that dialogue, but as the listener, you're going to try to start working in some motivational interviewing skills and maybe ask them, well, if you started having 2 beers every evening, how would that improve your life? You know, so those type things. So I'll give you about 5 or 10 minutes just to do that. So 5 minutes, switch, and then do it over again. Then we'll kind of talk about some of the things that you guys experienced in talking to each other.